Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place where we can have great conversations with people and learn some fun things along the way. I'm Isaac Levin. I'm very excited for my guest today. My guest is Elahn Danee. Elahn, do you want to come on, say hello, introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Elahn Danee. I am a self-taught C# and .NET developer. I've started this journey back August 2020, and I'm still sticking with it. And now my new mission is to not only continue to learn how to code, but also encourage other code newbies to keep going at it as well. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. So, just a little bit of backstory. So, I found out about this lovely person from her .NET Conf talk that she did in 2021. So, November 2021, go and check that out on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it was really inspiring because it was talking about the why of getting started. And I'd love to, for maybe folks that haven't seen that, if you want to just do just a 1 or 2 minute elevator pitch about like what the talk was about and maybe give a little bit of backstory on why you thought it was important to give that talk.
Yeah, for me, I felt like I was never planning on switching into tech. It wasn't a part of my life journey up until um, the pandemic, honestly, and just seeing all this despair, all so many people losing their jobs, everybody working from home. Well, the people who had the privilege to work from home. And since I was working from home, I felt like it only made sense to learn how to code. One, to kill time because I was bored, but two, like I felt it was a really good skill to learn. Obviously, we had TikTok, we had Netflix, we had all these apps, this examples of technology and how they brought us all together. It only made sense that I learned how technology works. And software development is part of that, obviously. So um, along that journey, and it's still a journey even to this day, it was just learning how to reach out to my community, building a community in the first place, and also battling imposter syndrome
Yeah.
as I begin the journey and continue on the journey, especially if you're not seeing certain results that you want. Um, Still deciding to stick with the journey. So I felt like that talk was very important, especially because from my research and my understanding, imposter syndrome is a huge thing in the tech industry. So that's something that everybody deals with. So why not talk about imposter syndrome? Why not face it head first and kind of stare down and just face it and talk about it. And especially for other code newbies, since that is going to be a very huge thing, a very huge obstacle for them if they let it, of course, when they're first starting out. So,
That's so spot on. And just for folks who are tuning in, so we were having this conversation a little bit earlier about why I wanted to talk to her so much, right? Because I think as somebody who felt like, at least in tech, and I know a lot of people in tech feel the same way, you kind of just, you're a developer. There was no choice. You just felt like you just had to do it because you had interests, right? And when people come to tech from different avenues, different career choices or different career paths, I'm very interested in understanding the why. And I get, you mentioned a little bit earlier about, things with the pandemic and all these other sort of things. But what was your initial experience like when you came on and you started to, get like, what was your getting, we always talk about in tech, like what's the getting started experience? So
right.
what was your getting started experience?
For me, my getting started experience, I was so excited because it was
Yeah.
something new, and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna learn how to hack.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna have like a particular set of skills. I was super excited to learn. Um, a little bit intimidated, not gonna lie. Um, I picked up a couple courses from Udemy, and I looked up a whole bunch of like videos on YouTube, like how to become a software developer. I will say, watching some of them kind of set a certain type of expectation on
Sure.
how their journey would be. Like,
Yeah.
videos like I went to a boot camp for 3 months, and now I'm a software developer,
Yep.
or I studied 6 months and now I'm making a certain amount of money. I will say that, but other than that, it was very like it was exciting. It was new. Um, I was listening to like a whole bunch of podcasts, like how do you do this? How do you get into
Yeah.
this? And one of the podcasts, I can't remember the name right now. It sucks. But one of the podcasts that I was listening to was saying how important an online community is
Yeah.
when getting into tech, and they had mentioned that Twitter was a super great online space when
Sure.
you're trying to start out and build a community. So that's as soon as she said that, I downloaded Twitter. I made a new account, and I said hello,
Yeah.
hello world, to the timeline. I will say like using hashtags really helped find
Mm-hmm.
the people that I was looking for, such as code newbie,
Yeah.
like software development. I will say C sharp was a little bit difficult to find,
Sure.
in .NET, because I saw a lot of like Python,
Yeah.
Java, JavaScript, and that's another reason why my new mission is so important to me. It is reaching out and creating an online space, contributing to the online space for the .NET world and the
Yeah.
C sharp community. I want to be the person that people see when they click that hashtag, or at least
Yeah.
one of the people.
Sure.
So that was my startup experience. I was super excited. At some point, I was like really obsessed. I still have my moments,
Yeah.
but I was obsessed to the point where like I was trying to solve some exercises like in bed, like while I was trying to fall asleep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of mellowed out just a little bit
Yeah.
now, since it's like okay, it is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I don't want to burn myself out. I can't
Yeah.
keep going at that pace as I was like earlier
Yep.
in the journey back in 2020. Like it's already 2022, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Please don't get me started on what
It's
year it is. Yeah.
crazy. Like what year is this
Yep.
again? So that is kind of like my take now. My New Year's resolution and my plan for this year is to dial it back a little bit.
Okay.
Um, as in less is more. Um, Instead of like studying every single day, study like maybe 4 days out of the week and spend the other 3 days doing creative work.
Sure.
Because I do feel like in order to problem solve, as a software developer, you also have to be creative.
Sure.
So I don't want to just keep learning and stuffing information
Yeah.
into my brain, but also just kind of like being fluid as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, whether your tool is a paintbrush or a chisel or a keyboard, right? Like there is
Right.
creativity that needs to come involved with tech, right? Um, I probably a lot of people don't think as romantically about tech as that, right? It's like it's oh, I'm trying to make some money, and I'm just I'm making some, writing some text boxes over some data or whatever. But no,
Right.
like to solve a problem, like do need a bit of creativity. And a lot of the problems they've been solved, sure, but not all of them. And that's the reason why there's
Right.
so many tech jobs out there. Um, and that kind of leads me into, you know, this area that I'm curious about with you is that like obviously community building initially and getting started and learning initially like doesn't make money, doesn't pay the bills, right? So like
No.
I'd love to get your thoughts on like on what that's like, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
you're obviously making an income some other way, doesn't
Yeah.
matter what that way is, but you're trying to get into this other space too because you find there's some real value for you there. Like, what is that
Right.
experience like? Because you're kind of treating like learning how to be a developer as a hobby right now.
Yeah, and that's what made me realize like I meant to do this. Like
Sure.
even like having conversations like this online, it's so fun for me. If I could do this, like if I could get paid to do this, of course, I would
Yeah.
love to do it
Yeah, of
because I would do
course.
it for free. Like I
Yeah.
literally would do it for free. I will say like that it is a journey.
Yep.
That's like the biggest thing. It's a journey. It's kind of like managing expectations,
Yes.
just because it takes time to learn something so different. Like I work in an unrelated field,
Hmm.
so it takes a lot of time to learn something like completely different that
Yep.
you've never learned before, and also build community. So it's like I work a 9 to 5.
Hmm.
Um, I have to be a little bit more organized and more
Sure.
intentional with my daily routines. So, which also is why I want to dial it back a little bit with the learning part because I
Hmm.
still I want to talk to people. Like I want to like learn about other developers' experience, and I feel like that also takes time. So for me, and I hope I'm answering your question, I'm becoming a little bit more disciplined with how I manage my daily schedule.
Sure.
Like I have my planner on my table right now with me. Um, certain days are for communicating with the community. Other days are for learning, and other days are for practicing creativity.
Hmm.
And it's like I was saying earlier, it's just more of this process of how less is more. Because that's one thing that I don't want to do. I don't want to burn out.
Yeah.
I don't want to burn out. Trying to do everything all at once. It's not practical. It's not logical. And it's not really smart.
No, not at
so,
all.
so that is my biggest goal, biggest step for 2022 is balance. It
Okay.
is um, being okay to let some of it go in
Okay.
order to like receive it again. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think maybe I'd like to get a little bit more like, so what does balance look like to you? Because I think, you know, in tech, I think a lot of us, we are getting started is, I mean, there's different paths, but it's all around the same thing. Like, you got to open up
Right,
some editor, whether it's, your Visual Studio or Sublime Text or the browser or whatever it is, right? And you're giving yourself a task like, oh, I'm going to learn how to write a Hello World application, or I'm going to learn how
right,
to do loops, or I'm going to learn how to do whatever, right? And but it all comes to like, to your point about balance, it's like, okay, there's other stuff that I have to do, whether that's my 9 to 5 job that you're mentioning, or maybe there's other things like maybe I have to do documentation, or I have to
yeah,
get
yeah,
business requirements, or I have to do all these other things too that aren't writing code or learning technical concepts. And I'd like to get your thoughts on like, and I don't know this if you work from home or you don't work from home, but I'd imagine that if you do work from home, it is challenging to like being able to balance the work that you need to do for your job and the hobby that you have that has nothing to do with your job. Is that fair?
right. Right. I will say, like, at least for the working from home part, I feel like I'm so grateful for
Sure.
that. It
Yeah.
makes it a little bit easier to transition. Like, you don't have to worry about like the commute. So, like, for the people who are dealing with a commute going to work and you're still taking the time to study and learn and be present, like, more power to you. I will say I'm privileged. I am very grateful to be able to work from home.
Yeah.
It's not every day, but like when I do, that's when it's like, okay, structure. Like for example, um, last in 2020, 2021, I used to want to work out every single day.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I still need to make time
Hmm.
to study and to be present
Yep.
because the problem was I found myself, especially because I was doing 100 days of code.
Yep.
Um, I was doing that challenge and I was trying to cram everything in like within the same day. And I was so stressed. Like I couldn't even be present in the learning process or doing the coding challenges,
Yeah.
because I felt the need, like especially if I was stuck on something, I felt the need to like produce like
Yeah.
something to show the timeline, like,
Yeah.
hey,
Any
I'm
any
doing
chal
this.
any challenge you need to provide results of said challenge, right?
Right, right. And it was just very stressful. It was too much. Like, so now for 2022, I have worked out a schedule where I work out every other day.
Mm-hmm.
And then alternative, like the every other day, I would also network with the community, talk to the
Yeah.
community, um like those alternative days. So say for example, like Monday and Wednesday I work out, Tuesday and Thursday like I do community building um conversations. Like
Yeah.
that is what I want to do this year. Less is more. If you
It's true.
spend too much time trying to do everything all at once within the same day, you will drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. Like you still have to live. And you don't want to traumatize yourself with learning how to code.
You don't want to burn out, right? You
Yeah,
don't
you don't
like
want to
that's the
burn
big thing.
out. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. And I think one of the
Yes.
things that's really interesting for me is that like me getting started or me learning how to be a technologist, that path is substantially different than people that are getting started now. Like you, for instance, now I'd imagine there's probably an exhaustion of resources, right? Where it becomes almost it's a job within itself to figure out what things you want to hold on to or capture. Like you mentioned, like online courses like Udemy or like courses like Pluralsight. Um, like there's so much material out there to like learn how to be a
Yes.
developer, and not all of it is
Yes.
good content,
Yeah.
right? And I think
It,
that's
oh,
yeah, and I think that's what's really
I'm learning that.
challenging, right? Is figuring out,
Right.
do I want to invest my time in this? Because and I think a lot of people that are listening that are developers can equate to this. A lot of our job is risk assessment, right?
Okay.
Is this decision that I'm going to make, is it going to be positive or negative? Like if we're, whether we're writing some code or we're trying out a new open source or third party package that we're looking to implement, or we're trying to learn a new concept and following along with a course, like everything is a calculated risk because it's like, am I going to get the return on this investment, this time investment?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, every, you know, a friend of mine says we only have so many keystrokes, right? And I think at the end of the day, like that's so true. Like every decision you need to make needs to be weighed. I'm not saying like live your life in fear because it's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But very much just like be I can't think of the word right now, but
Mindful.
be mindful, yeah. Or I had a way better word, but I can't remember what it is now. But be just understand the decisions you make may have positive or negative repercussions in the future, and you don't know what those they look like, right? And I think that's
Right.
just something that's very interesting, especially for folks that are getting started. Is like, where do you start? Because like
Yeah.
you said like you just installed the Twitter app and you started posting on your timeline, searching for hashtags. I'd imagine very very quickly you found out like, oh, there's way too much stuff here.
Yes.
And I'd love to kind of get your like maybe some tools of the trade that you learned about how to navigate just that that hose of content, right? And how
Yeah.
maybe some things that you've thought of about building frameworks around like, is this content valuable or is this content not valuable? Like how do you weigh each of these different risks?
I will say that like I'm still learning that,
Yeah,
honestly.
we're all still learning it.
Like yeah. like with the question, where do you start? Like I'm also wondering like where do you end? Like how do you know like when you made
There's
it?
no I'm
How do
shaking
you
my head. There's
know?
no end. There's no
How
end.
do you know when you're a pro?
Well, no, so I think that's a really really good point to make as well. Like if you feel like you've learned everything, you've done it wrong,
Okay.
right? Because
That makes me feel better.
you'll find this out if you do end up having a career in tech. If you want to have a career in tech, you'll find out that you'll run across a lot of people who feel like they have solved everything, and those people, in my
Mm,
experience, are not great people to work with. You want the
Rigid.
pe well, it's not even just rigid, like like, and this is know it allism, right? Or
Okay.
like whataboutism. Uh, there are people out there that feel like I myself am very opinionated, but I do want to hear other opinions. There's
Right.
people out there who are very opinionated but don't want to hear other opinions because they think their opinion is superior. And I think what's really interesting about learning in general is we learn until the day we die. Like in life, in work, in personal growth and everything. So for anybody to say, "Oh, there's nothing for me to learn out there," maybe they've made a decision with themselves. They feel like they're comfortable with the skill set they have. That they don't need to worry about money anymore because they can always find a job. Don't
Mm,
worry. Maybe tech isn't something they do for fun. Maybe tech is a job, which is totally cool. But for me specifically, and other people that I'm friends with, and maybe potentially in the future you, tech is something that we're passionate about and we enjoy doing. And we're just so fortunate to have our job be a part of that. Not to say our job is
right.
all sunshine and roses, but I couldn't ever imagine working like a job in healthcare or a job in financial services or some other industry,
Mm,
right? Like I
mm-hmm.
work in tech. And I think that's the big thing that I like to tell people is like, if you want to continue to have this positive feeling and you have the same opinions as me, you're passionate about tech, just always be learning.
Always.
Otherwise,
Yes. Yes.
you'll stagnate, and then if you ever, you know, you might not be get as much enjoyment out of it. And I know that was a
Right.
long-winded way of saying, well, it doesn't really
No.
end, but I think there's there's something to say about you should never really end your learning journey. And if
Yeah.
you did, maybe you need to find a new journey to go down.
Yeah. I will say, like, I guess like the question is like how you know you made it, like
Oh,
as a developer, like how
it
I
depends
made
on
it,
what you care about,
like
to be honest.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Like if your job is to make $250,000, or if your job is to have 250,000 Twitter followers, or if you're like, depending on what your goals are, yeah, like there's different definitions of the word made it. There's also some people out there that they're very happy in what they're doing, and
yeah,
they maybe they're building an open source tool, and they maybe they have a little bit of notoriety from that, but they don't make a lot of money. Open source isn't something you make money on. Maybe they're working some typical developer job at some company, but they're happy because they're able to do the
yeah,
things that they enjoy doing. And
yeah.
there's
That
you
makes
know
a lot of sense.
there's joy in that. Um, there's also joy if this is your prerogative and being the most popular person on Twitter. Like if that brings you joy, then
Yeah,
go for it. Your life will be very painful,
yeah.
but there's some
A
joy in
lot of
that for some
pressure.
people. Yeah, a lot of pressure for sure. And you know, and to circle back to like your journey about getting started and your journey about learning, like what I'd imagine when you've as you've gone through this process of learning about
Mhm.
technology, there are probably a lot of things that you say, "Oh, that looks very familiar to this thing that I learned in this other realm," right? Because I think one of the things that a lot of people probably get hung up on is they think they need to be like some math wizard, or they need to know how to build a
Yeah,
computer, or like all these other things, and it's not true at all. To be in tech, you just need to be a very good problem solver and
problem
have
solver.
like
Yeah,
good time management. And I'd like to kind
yeah,
of get your thoughts. Like, what are some of the things that you saw? Because you've obviously learned how to do other things in your life,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
what are some of the things that you've kind of seen that are similarities between other things that you've learned in the past and what you've learned in tech so far?
I will say, like in a general sense, like the documentation of
Yeah.
like how like to run like a program or how to
Mm-hmm.
use a method, like just that documentation. Like I've seen a lot of that like in my own job, like
Sure.
just documenting like, okay, this is how you do that. um like technical stuff, like, okay, if you do this, you do that. Especially learning algorithms. I like when you first hear about algorithms, you're like, oh
No,
wow.
don't don't
Oh
stress
wow,
on algorithms.
algorithms.
I know no
The
algorithms, and
algorithms.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, algorithms are
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, but like just learning that, like, okay, if this happens, then this happens, and then
Yeah.
that happens, and then that happens. Like how kind of like seeing it simplified, you're like, oh, that makes sense. That it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing. I will say, like, even doing like what the 100 days of code challenge, I used to study, like I used to do it in the evening before bed,
Sure.
and it would kind of feel like a puzzle, like just it almost felt like a little game, like solving something like, okay, we want this to happen. Like, how do we make that happen? And then like here are your tools, here is what's needed, what's required. And that's kind of reminded me of like crossword puzzles. Not to like
Hmm.
simplify it and or
Sure.
like, oh, it's so easy, but
Yeah.
like just that like excitement, like, okay, how do we solve this? And just kind of like having fun with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's very like it when you think about everything is just a some conglomeration of solving some problem, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I was so my kid, one of my kids, well, both of my kids do it, but one of them really gets it. He's 6, and he we signed him up for this like learn how to code like service. Like it's all like, it's like a kids game, but you learn how to program because he saw it at school and he's like, I want to do this. So like, okay, we'll sign him up for it.
That's so cool.
And he's like going through this process of like learning about conditions and functions and loops. And he came up to me and he was talking about all these different things. And he's like, oh, like a Boolean is like a yes or no, but like they say it's true or false. I'm like, okay, so you start starting to learn things now. And I was like, what do you think your dad does? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, he does this. And he's like, oh, okay. And like, and
Oh.
I think, and I don't know if he's going to be a developer, whatever, but I think just the fact that he was interested in it is interesting to me enough because it's very much a game, right? He's
Yeah.
learning how to play like a game with like some fuzzy critters and they're rolling around and they're eating stuff and like that's what he's learning. But like he's having to put in like building blocks of like, okay, I move forward and then I turn right and then I turn left. He's like, you know, a lot of kids based coding tools are the same way. And when I was watching him do it, I'm like, oh, he's learning how to problem solve. And he's
Yeah.
learning how to problem solve the exact same way I problem solve. Because he tries something, it doesn't work. He gets a bug, and like a little bug shows up on the screen. He's like, oh, I gotta squash this bug. I'm like, oh, that's like the exact same like
Yeah.
nomenclature. Like people talk about squashing bugs. And it's interesting to me because it's all about he's taking tools that he's already learned, even though he's 6, and he's using some of the things that he's learned and he's putting them towards this new thing that he's enjoying. And I can equate that to being an adult learning some new technical concept. And it's like, okay, like I read some documentation on it and I'm like, okay, like this doesn't make any sense. How have I solved this problem in the past, but with
Mhm.
another goal in mind? And that's how whenever I want to learn new things, I'm like, okay, I have like a framework of like, okay, I want to figure out how to do this particular thing in this technology or using this method or whatever. And that's what's been successful for me. But other people
Yeah.
don't learn that way. Other people like
Right.
to, drain the ocean with all of the information they could possibly do, and then they want to start playing. I
Yeah.
definitely prefer to play first and then just be miserable until I get it to work. And I think
I
that's
like
probably,
that.
yeah, you like that approach too?
I like that, especially because like sometimes we could get so caught up in um, problem solving in the way that it was taught to us,
Sure.
rather than coming up with your own type of solutions and your
Hmm.
own ways of finding those solutions. Which is why I like going back to like being me prioritizing creativity or
Yep.
creativity activities in my life. Uh, yeah, I think sometimes we could get so caught up in like, okay, well, the person on Udemy, the teacher on Udemy said to solve it this way.
Hmm.
But there's like, I'm sure there's different ways. Like for
Yeah.
every problem in the world, there's a solution. So, and sometimes there's multiple solutions. So being open um, to to receiving or understanding that there is a different solution, and you don't have to always take the same path.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, that's I like that though. Like just doing whatever, seeing what you can do, and until you get there, until you solve
Yeah.
it.
That's why I've always thought, and you've never been given the luxury of going through a technical interview. You might in the future,
I,
and you might come
yeah,
to the same the same opinion of me at the end. Is like there's not at least in most cases, there's not a 100% right answer. It's not like
Yeah.
practical science where it's like, okay, water can only be H2O. You can't like throw other molecules into water or other elements into water and it turns into a different version of water. That's not how water works.
Hmm.
Um, but if you have a problem to solve, you can solve it X different ways
Hmm.
with technology. All of them, most of them probably aren't the right way. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably to get to your point about like learning the right way or whatever.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
a teacher at Udemy wants people to learn how to do things the right way. Otherwise, they won't get a job. And then they'll be like, well, I took this Udemy course and I didn't get a job, so I want my money back from Udemy.
Mm,
And
okay.
and I mean, it doesn't work like that. But
Right.
at the end of the day, you want to have people have positive experiences only. So you kind of push them down like this very, very narrow corridor with only the best possible outcomes at the end of it. But
That
people
makes
don't learn.
sense.
People don't learn that way. At least I don't.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always very. I'm always curious about people who have done like a code camp or like they've self taught themselves because it's like you're following someone else's path and you're
Hmm.
trying to kind of make a step for you. Like me, like when I learned through like traditional university, and I kind of just gave up on like following all the paths and just did things the way I wanted to do, and I just happened to fall face first into a degree.
Yeah.
And I mean that's I think that's probably more to say it's like my stubbornness to like adapting to learn. It's a different
Or
way
it's
than
just your
anything
own
else. Yeah,
way.
of course. And I think my
There's
point as
another
I
way to look at
ramble,
it.
I love to ramble a bit, is like it's our responsibility to figure out what we want to do. No one's going to tell us that. So whether it's us learning how to write with you in a particular way or us wanting to you only use a particular language, that's okay because that's where our comfort is.
Hmm.
And whether you're talking about work in the technology space or personal life, it's all about being comfortable and being happy. Because if you're not happy from doing something, you're not enjoying it. Like you're not gonna want to do it, and you're eventually gonna get burnt out, and you're
Yeah.
not gonna want to move forward with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. But also like so going back to like the whole learning, um, I realized that tech was for me just for the fact that the learning doesn't end. It pains
Yeah.
me. I will say it pains me because it's like I don't know, like am I don't think I'm a newbie, but like I'm still kind of like not there yet, at least not where I want to be yet.
Yeah.
I love that the learning is endless
Mm-hmm.
because like I always feel like I need to learn something new or I'll get like really bored.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that it can also be a challenge when it comes to like sticking with a certain
Yeah.
language, sticking with it. Um, but that's what I do love about like coding. It's just that it doesn't stop. There's always something new to learn, something new to like teach and like relay and communicate over. But yeah, going back, like it is kind of it can be frustrating though.
Oh yeah. And I think even to add about like you can feel like you're like code newbie is a funny word to me because I feel like we're all code newbies. Because you could say,
Okay.
"Hey Isaac, can you do this one thing in Rust?" Or this one thing was something that you've never done before, and I'll be like, "No, I cannot." And like, okay, well, can you learn? And I will then try to learn. And that first day, I am a newbie. I might know how to do all this
Right.
stuff, and I might have years of experience, but it's not contextually relevant. Sure, I might have some building blocks that I can use to be like to get to my point faster, but I'm still
Yeah.
learning. I'm still a newbie. Like I couldn't go and get a job today in a bunch of different areas. Um, and that's what kind of keeps driving me forward. It's I can continue to learn how to do things this particular way, or I can learn how to take concepts that I've built over my career and
Mhm.
equate them to different mediums.
Right.
Like, for instance, like I'm not a developer, technically. I'm a marketer. I work in marketing. But I've been a developer my entire career, and now I fit into this magical world where I write, you know, presentation slides and then I do demos. And then I
Right.
write technical blog posts. But I don't write code every single day. Um, but I'm still allowed to be a developer, or at least tell people I'm a developer, and they roll their eyes at me. And what's interesting about that is that I think it goes to a point that I'd like to hear your thoughts on, is that
Mhm.
you don't need to be a developer or to be technical. Like, you don't have to write code every day.
Oh,
You
thank
just
God.
have to have a passion for technology. And I know
Yeah.
getting started, you feel like, oh, I have to learn stuff every single day. And I love that you're maybe rethinking that approach and like taking opportunities to absorb learning.
Yeah.
Because I've done like how to do this in 30 days, and I've done those sort of things, or like some home workout program, and like your body and your brain is just so exhausted that like at the
Hmm.
end of it, people are like, okay, what'd you learn day two? No idea. So I
It
think
was a
that's
blur.
I'm glad that you started to realize like it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality.
Right. Right. And I will say, like, that is one of the like hugest things that I'm learning and I'm coming to understand, that the tech, or the journey into tech, is just like any other journey.
Mm-hmm.
And any journey requires mindfulness and being
Yes.
present and gratitude. Like, I can be so frustrated with myself. Like, I was trying to study yesterday after coming back from the holidays. I was trying to study yesterday, and I was just like, I am not getting this. I
Yeah.
am hitting a wall.
Yeah.
I'm freaking
Yeah.
out. But it's like, okay, calm down. Like, let's not be dramatic. Um, sometimes you're not going to get something, but check it out. You know a lot more now than you did when you first started. And
Yes.
it's just honoring that journey, being grateful for what you've learned, and being in the present. And that's one thing that I'm learning, is that, like, especially like, this is how we get imposter syndrome, is like, I
Mm-hmm.
need more, I need more, I need
Yep.
more, I need to learn more, I need to do more, I need to produce more. But like, why are you here? Like, what do you
Yeah.
want? Like, you're never going to be happy if you're constantly looking to the next step, the next day, the next month, maybe even the next job. Like, it's like, what did you get out of the journey today?
Yep.
Like, how do you feel today? You may feel like crap, okay, but at least you still tried. At least you had the courage to choose to study, to choose to learn.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where my head is at, is that for me, especially after um my .NET conference talk,
Mm-hmm.
like it was such a high for me, because I am
Yeah.
somebody who has dealt with social anxiety like almost all my life. Like,
Sure.
I still like feel shy, like every now and then, like online. I'm just like,
Yeah.
but trying to
No,
get
that's
over it.
good. Yeah.
Like, it was like September, October, November. It was a period of time where like I figured out, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to do this. Like, I have this passion
Yeah.
to learn and to meet with people online and have conversations like this. Like,
Yeah.
I love this stuff. And like, I just like, there were times, like, or days on end where I could not sleep. Like, I stayed awake because I was so excited. I was
Yeah.
like, this is it, this is it. And then the holidays come around. It gets super hectic, super crazy.
Yep.
We have birthdays, sick, like colds, like
Yep.
sicknesses, and
Yeah.
travel, like just a lot of stuff. And it just kind of like forced me to sit still and like to just be. And it's so hard. Like, how do you like the momentum? Like, when you have momentum and you're just like, yes, this is it, this is it. And then a series of events kind of like require you to let go a bit. So for me, I am learning that this journey is also about flow. It's about um and I don't know if you've heard of Napoleon Hill. I was listening to this video on YouTube. It's called Burning Desire and Detachment from the Outcome. It's basically about like balancing that passion with letting it go as well, and to being in flow, and understanding that it is an ebb and flow of the journey. And to avoid burnout, you must be able to balance the letting go of the expectations
Yeah.
with that passion. So that's kind of like where my head is at right now. Not to get all woo woo, but I feel like that is just with any journey. The journey into tech is just like any other journey where you have to find joy in the now, joy in what you've learned, joy in what you've come to know. Um, the fact that you're still here, um, especially for me, like the fact that it's 2022 and I
Yeah.
started in 2020. Um, just being proud of who you are now.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an expert, but just being proud and being grateful. So that's where I'm trying to settle down in. Is like, okay, balance.
It's so funny because like, and don't take this as offensive in any way, but you sounded like very much
Okay.
like a life coach, right?
Oh wow.
Like the way, no, like no, and that does not mean a negative thing. I know
No.
a lot of people have negative opinions about life
Compliment.
coaches, but I mean, I think
Compliment.
at the end of the day, like it's all about betterment, right?
Yes.
And if you feel like that you can be a better person or feel like you're a better person or whatever construct you want to put into it, and this task of learning how to be a developer is a part of that journey, awesome. And like it's no one else's thoughts than yours, right? Like if somebody's like, oh, like I don't think you should be a developer because like it's going to be all this work and you already have a job and
Yeah.
whatever, and your response can be, well, it's what I want.
What you want?
So like what am I supposed to do? And I think that
Yeah.
that's I'd like to get your like what it, like, and I know we just talked about like don't have end goals, like don't have futures, like just focus in the moment. But I know you have goals. So
Yeah.
what are some of the goals that you have, like maybe for this year or just broadly in the future? Like, do you want to be a developer, like by like 9 to 5 developer? Do you want to be somebody who really works with and embraces the developer community and that be the way that you interact with technology? Do you just have a hobby of like, oh, I'm gonna write some code a couple of days a month and I'll be happy? Like, what does future look like for you?
That is such a good question in terms of because like I am trying to kind of like keep in
Yeah.
what is in like my best like self, like what I'm aligned with. If it is being a developer as a 9 to 5, like amazing. But I will say what makes me excited is not just like coding. It's not just learning how to
Yeah.
code, but it's seeing the people and conversing with the people who know how to code, who've been experts, who's been in the game for like 10 plus years, or even like
Sure.
just starting out. Like I just like talking. I like talking
Yeah.
to people. Like it's kind
Nothing
of
wrong
like
with liking to talk.
yeah, it's kind of like an
Nothing wrong with it.
oxymoron. Like I've had social anxiety, but I still like to talk. I like to talk to people.
Well, social anxiety is different for everybody too, right? Like you could just
Yeah,
be introverted
yeah,
and not really get the same high around people as
right,
people who are extroverted are, right? It doesn't mean
right.
you don't like people. It just means that you don't like everybody
Yeah,
at
yeah.
once.
But yeah, like I love learning, and I think tech just happens to fit me well because you're always learning. Like you
Yep.
said, it doesn't stop. It can be
Yep.
frustrating, but it's also like satisfying to me that it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
stop. There's always something new to learn, and because there's always something new to learn, that means like other people are learning too, and other people may need some assistance in learning. And I
Yep.
would love to just talk to people and like see why they're here, and like if I can like simplify and synthesize like certain concepts for
Sure.
them, that would be awesome for me. Like I
Yep.
just, and a little bit it's like also kind of like challenging myself with like um and with any type of imposter syndrome, like fear of public speaking, like
Sure.
just challenging myself and pushing myself in little ways. And I feel like it all just kind of like meshes together like perfectly, which is why I was so excited that I could hardly sleep because I was like, yes, I
It
like
might be.
this.
That also might be a caffeine issue, but
It
anyway,
probably could
it
be.
probably could be.
I dialed it back a little.
Yeah, no, and I totally get there. Like I've had like if there's something in your brain, it's not gonna let you go to sleep. right? So whether it's a problem you're trying to solve, or trying to plan a vacation with your family, or something for work, like if it's in there bouncing around,
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to get to sleep. And if it's something that's really
exactly.
like, if you enjoy, like, oh, I want to wake up tomorrow and I want to do this thing, like it's very hard to like convince your body to go to sleep. And I think what's also really interesting too is that, like, you mentioned a couple of things that are really resonating for me. It's what you want to do. Like, you are excited because, like, it's not just, a lot of people are in tech for money or for fame or whatever, right? I don't know about fame as much, but most people are in tech for money, right? So the people who are in tech for the joy of being in tech, it's very interesting because, like, whether you're taking classes through code camp or your university, like the goal is like tech is like the best place to work because you can make the most money and blah 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 blah. But tech isn't always for everybody. And I
Right.
think one of the things that's really interesting is that when you're learning, and you've probably dealt with this a million times already, is like not every single time you sit at a computer you're going to be productive, right? And
Nope.
it's about navigating all of that time where you're not productive because you feel good the one or two times a day you are productive,
Mm, okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I jokingly say that a lot of people that are in technology are kind of like masochists. They kind of enjoy a little bit of pain because
You have
it's
to.
a lot of pain to get to the joy. Whether it's
Yes. Yes.
builds not working, or you have bugs, or you're trying to debug, or you're trying to do whatever, all these things, right? You you get off, to be crass, you get off on the fact that you got this done or you solved this problem and on to the
Yes.
next problem. And a lot of people don't
Yes.
really spend a lot of time kind of savoring that moment, that like that positivity of being successful. They just move on to the next thing. And that's something that I've tried
Yes.
to do a lot. And one of my pieces of advice for you is like, slow down and enjoy when you get something right. Because more than likely, if you end up
Mm,
having a career in tech, or you just do tech as a hobby, you're gonna be wrong way more than right.
okay.
So enjoy the stuff that you're doing that you yield positive results from.
That is such a good point. And that's literally like what I want to do is just slow
Yep.
down. Like these days, like as a part of my New Year's resolution, just journaling more and
Mm,
like going back to because I've been slipping, but like going back to like meditation and
sure.
doing like yoga in the morning and just like sitting and being and just being grateful and being present because it's like it is a chase, especially if you're a masochist and you're looking
Yeah.
for pain. You're always looking for pain,
Yep.
always searching.
Yeah.
You'll
There's pain
find yourself
everywhere. There's pain
pain
everywhere. You don't have to look
everywhere.
too hard either. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like you know, life doesn't always have to be about pain. Life could be about like, especially after 2020, like
Yeah. This is
sometimes
very true.
you just yeah, like you just want to be. And I think it's also just going back to um my why and like doing things for me is that I feel like 2020 exposes like you got to live and you got to do things for
Yeah.
you and you got to be authentic and be your authentic self. And if it makes you happy and it's not hurting anybody, like, and it's not making you like super responsible, like just do it, go
Yep.
for it. Like, especially if it's like something like random, like for me, like one of my goals this year is like I want to learn how to surf. Like I love the ocean. Like I used to not
Sure.
like the ocean, it used to scare me. But like just being in the water and going with the flow and like just kind of like just being present. It forces you to be present
Yes.
and to take your time and to be mindful, especially because you're not present. Like you could drown,
Yeah.
but
Things can happen
things
really
can
quickly if you're in
happen.
the ocean, if you're not present, for
E-
sure.
exactly. So that's my thing. Like I want to learn how to go with the flow. Literally, like I want to learn how to surf. It's something like random. It's something like me, but like that is like one of my things that's like not tech related, but still tech related
Yeah. Well,
because it helps.
yeah. Well, everything boils down to, like, not to quote a very famous Netflix show where I'll get sued, but like you like look for things that bring you joy, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and you know, I think you have a privilege that I don't, and and let me just you know, it's interesting because like I feel like I have to do tech because I don't
Yeah.
know anything else.
Yeah.
You're choosing to do tech. So you're coming from a place of you're making a conscious positive choice. Me, like if I all of a sudden was like one day woke up like I don't like doing this anymore, I'd be effed. Like no,
No.
no, and I no, but I think, but I obviously I wouldn't be because I would
Yeah.
figure something else out. But I think my point is that
Yeah.
like I don't know anything else,
Yeah.
and uh, I have a lot of envy for folks that are choosing to go down this path because they see the value in it,
That's so
because they have
crazy. I
other
feel
life
like,
experiences.
yeah, sorry not to cut you off, but
No,
it's
it's
just
fine.
like, I feel like it's so cool. Like, I envy you. Like,
Sure. No, no, no.
just to
Let's not do
like,
this. Let's not talk about how
uh,
cool. How let's not do the envy thing.
no.
Like, my ego's way too big to begin with. No, but sorry. Go
But
ahead. Finish what you
yeah,
say.
yeah, no, I feel like I just feel like what you're doing is super cool and like it's very inspirational. So like to say that you like envy the people who choose like what? Like I'll just say that.
No, I mean, and before we started the stream, like I was talking a little bit about like I do this for me because I'm a very opinionated person with a lot of opinions that I feel like are the only opinions. To talk a little bit about people's opinions earlier, and my goal in life is to get enough outsiders' perspective to change my opinions. And the only way that I can do that is by continually having conversation with people that are substantially different than me. If I was on
Mm,
here just talking to people who look like me with the same career path as me, talking about the same technology as me, there's other shows for that.
yeah.
This show is very much talking with people that have different backgrounds, different opinions, different mindsets as me, and coming to a realization of like, oh, Isaac, you could probably learn from this person in a different way. Like, that's why, these talks, sometimes they're not technical at all. Sometimes they're really technical. Sometimes it's literally just learning about how people have found the joy they're looking for in this world.
Mm,
And that's what's interesting for me.
mhm. Yeah, and I feel like I will say like yeah, what we were talking about like the contrast in who you're talking to. I feel like it really helps with finding your authentic self because
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know if your beliefs are just you believe it just because like it's been taught to you, that's all you
Yep.
know, that's all you see. So like to really expand and reach out and talk to people from all different backgrounds and hearing their journey, hearing their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like learning more about other people helps you learn more about yourself.
Yes.
So that's why I like this as well. It's
Yeah.
because you don't know what you don't know.
It's very
You
true. You should patent
so
that. You should trademark
I
that.
know. I think it might already
Oh,
be.
no. No, but I think you're very spot on. There's something to say about, like, we all have something to learn from each other, whether that's what to do or what not to do. Because I've had enough conversations in my life that I know, after talking to somebody for a few minutes, oh, that person has nothing for me, right? And that's okay. But I can learn
Tune it out.
that person is not for me, and to not do what that person has done, right? Because it's
Right.
not for me.
Right.
No better way to say it. So,
Yeah.
and as we're about to wrap up, I think one thing that's very interesting, I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, is like you obviously is not fair, but you're new to technology, new to tech Twitter, new to tech communities.
Yes.
uh and I imagine your experience was had some areas of potential like ways that could be better, and I would love to get your thoughts on like how can we do a better job. I mean, like my generation or maybe the generation before me that's still around, how do we help shape a community and shape an environment that's open for people that want to join?
I would say that I think it's just because I will say there can be a generation gap between,
Yeah.
and not really in terms of like age, but experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think opening the space, and I'm grateful for like the spaces that I've been in, It's just opening the space for people who aren't experts,
Yep.
people who are literally just starting out, maybe 6 months in. Like I said, I'm grateful that for the people that I've talked to and the spaces I've been in. At I'm not even a professional,
Hmm.
so I appreciate that. But I will say, like, encouraging more people and being a little bit more open about imposter syndrome, like the experts being open about imposter syndrome
Hmm.
and how you will never feel like you've really made it. Um, that's the one thing I can think about. But I also feel like, as someone who's new, it is also my responsibility to be the person that I would like to see in
Yeah.
the space. And if that's something I want, then I can't be afraid to be that person. And that's another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is because I want other people to feel like, hey, I'm 6 months in, but I still have a lot to learn. My experience is still valid, because that's what we want. We want people who are new. And if there's this weird thing of people who are new, then there aren't going to be people who are new. Like, there aren't
This
going to
is
be more
true.
people.
This is very true.
So it's like it's taking away the stigma of being the newbie, of being the rookie. Because it kind of it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to be the change that I want to see. Um, so yeah, that's where my thinking is at.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. Like, I think there's something to say about just, we've hit a couple of really, really interesting points, like about always learning and being positive. And I think that these are great tools for us, regardless of what your generation or of your experiences with anything, right? Like, staying positive and always be learning is something that we can definitely take wherever we go. So with that, Elahn, thank you so much for hopping on and chatting with me for an hour. This has been great. Um, I really love the conversation, especially around how we can think about things a bit differently, because I think always different perspectives is very, really valuable. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I like to ask my guests as we sign off is, if you can think of tech, the community around tech, or open source, or whatever you want to call it, if you can think about one word to describe that, what would that word be to you?
The first word that I thought was fun.
Fun. Yeah,
This
there you
has
go.
been fun.
Fun. Awesome. Well, I mean, fun. There's no better way that to
Right.
say
I'm
describe
surprised
it
this
than
has been an
fun.
hour.
What did I say at the beginning? Right? Like, I just want you to enjoy the hour. So,
Yeah, great conversation. Thank
so
you.
yeah. So thank you so much again for hopping on, and for the folks tuning in. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you next time on Coffee and Open Source. Take care, everybody.